Should be! Did you ever, my dear Sir, hear such unauthorised freedom? I looked at him with a contempt I did not wish to repress, and walked to the other end of the room. Very soon after, Mr. Smith sent for a hackney coach. When I would have taken leave of Miss Branghton, she turned angrily from me without making any answer. She supposes, perhaps, that I have rather sought, than endeavoured to avoid, the notice and civilities of this conceited young man. The ball was at the Long Room at Hampstead. This room seems very well named, for I believe it would be difficult to find any other epithet which might with propriety distinguish it, as it is without ornament, elegance, or any sort of singularity, and merely to be marked by its length. I was saved from the importunities of Mr. Smith, the beginning of the evening, by Madame Duval's declaring her intention to dance the first two dances with him herself. Mr. Smith's chagrin was very evident; but as she paid no regard to it, he was necessitated to lead her out. I was, however, by no means pleased when she said she was determined to dance a minuet. Indeed, I was quite astonished, not having had the least idea she would have consented to, much less proposed, such an exhibition of her person. She had some trouble to make her intentions known, as Mr. Smith was rather averse to speaking to the master of the ceremonies. During this minuet, how much did I rejoice in being surrounded only with strangers! She danced in a style so uncommon; her age, her showy dress, and an unusual quantity of rouge, drew upon her the eyes, and I fear the derision, of the whole company. Whom she danced with, I know not; but Mr. Smith was so ill-bred as to laugh at her very openly, and to speak of her with as much ridicule as was in his power. But I would neither look at nor listen to him, nor would I suffer him to proceed with any speech which he began, expressive to his vexation at being forced to dance with her. I told him, very gravely, that complaints upon such a subject might, with less impropriety, be made to every person in the room than to me. When she returned to us, she distressed me very much by asking what I thought of her minuet. I spoke as civilly as I could, but the coldness of my compliment evidently disappointed her. She then called upon Mr. Smith to secure a good place among the country dancers, and away they went, though not before he had taken the liberty to say to me in a low voice, "I protest to you, Ma'am, I shall be quite out of countenance if any of my acquaintance should see me dancing with the old lady." For a few moments I very much rejoiced at being relieved from this troublesome man; but scarce had I time to congratulate myself, before I was accosted by another, who begged the favour of hopping a dance with me. I told him that I should not dance at all; but he thought proper to importune me, very freely, not to be so cruel; that I was obliged to assume no little haughtiness before I could satisfy him I was serious. After this, I was addressed much in the same manner, by several other young men, of whom the appearance and language were equally inelegant and low-bred; so that I soon found my situation was both disagreeable and improper, since, as I was quite alone, I fear I must seem rather to invite than to forbid the offers and notice I received. And yet so great was my apprehension of this interpretation, that I am sure, my dear Sir, you would have laughed had you seen how proudly grave I appeared. I knew not whether to be glad or sorry when Madame Duval and Mr. Smith returned. The latter instantly renewed his tiresome entreaties, and Madame Duval said she would go to the card table; and as soon as she was accommodated, she desired us to join the dancers. I will not trouble you with the arguments which followed. Mr. Smith teased me till I was weary of resistance, and I should at last have been obliged to submit, had I not fortunately recollected the affair of Mr. Lovel, and told my persecutor that it was impossible I should dance with him, even if I wished it, as I had refused several persons in his absence. He was not contented with being extremely chagrined, but took the liberty, openly and warmly, to expostulate with me upon not having said I was engaged. The total disregard with which, involuntarily, I heard him, made him soon change the subject. In truth, I had no power to attend to him, for all my thoughts were occupied in retracing the transactions of the two former balls at which I had been present. The party, the conversation, the company, oh, how great the contrast! In a short time, however, he contrived to draw my attention to himself, by his extreme impertinence; for he chose to express what he called his admiration of me, in terms so open and familiar, that he forced me to express my displeasure with equal plainness. But how was I surprised when I found he had the temerity, what else can I call it, to impute my resentment into doubts of his honour; for he said, "My dear Ma'am, you must be a little patient. I assure you I have no bad designs, I have not upon my word; but really there is no resolving upon such a thing as matrimony all at once, what with the loss of one's liberty, and what with the ridicule of all one's acquaintance. I assure you, Ma'am, you are the first lady who ever made me even demur upon this subject; for after all, my dear Ma'am, marriage is the devil." "Your opinion, Sir," answered I, "of either the married or the single life can be of no manner of consequence to me, and therefore I would by no means trouble you to discuss their different merits." "Why, really, Ma'am, as to your being a little out of sorts, I must own I can't wonder at it; for, to be sure, marriage is all in all with the ladies; but with us gentlemen it's quite another thing. Now only put yourself in my place. Suppose you had such a large acquaintance of gentlemen as I have, and that you had always been used to appear a little smart among them. Why, now, could you like to let yourself down all at once into a married man?" I could not tell what to answer; so much conceit and so much ignorance both astonished and silenced me. "I assure you, Ma'am," added he, "there is not only Miss Biddy, though I should have scorned to mention her if her brother had not blabbed, for I'm quite particular in keeping ladies' secrets, but there are a great many other ladies that have been proposed to me; but I never thought twice of any of them, that is, not in a serious way; so you may very well be proud," offering to take my hand, "for I assure you there was nobody so likely to catch me at last as yourself." "Sir," cried I, drawing myself back as haughtily as I could, "you are totally mistaken if you imagine you have given me any pride I felt not before by this conversation. On the contrary, you must allow me to tell you I find it too humiliating to bear with it any longer." I then placed myself behind the chair of Madame Duval, who, when she heard of the partners I had refused, pitied my ignorance of the world, but no longer insisted upon my dancing. Indeed, the extreme vanity of this man makes me exert a spirit which I did not, till now, know that I possessed; but I cannot endure that he should think me at his disposal. The rest of the evening passed very quietly, as Mr. Smith did not again attempt speaking to me; except, indeed, after we had left the room, and while Madame Duval was sitting herself on the couch, he said, in a voice of pique, "Next time I take the trouble to get any tickets for a young lady, I'll make a bargain beforehand, that she shan't turn me over to her grandmother." We came home very safe, and thus ended this so long projected and most disagreeable affair. Letter 50.